We are live on Facebook, live on all the social medias.
Yeah.
For our Thursday weekly show, right?
Yeah.
Where we dialogue regarding questions that people have asked and questions about the spiritual life, questions about following God, questions of that nature, right? And so, welcome if you're just tuning in, or if you're watching after the fact. I'm just going to take a second and share the broadcast to Facebook and all the proper places. So here we go. And we are sharing. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. And share and share. There we go. Okay. So here we are live.
Well, hi everyone.
Hello everyone. Yeah, it always takes a second to do the rigmarole, right? And that's a technical term. Rigmarole,
right.
Yes. So welcome to our Thursday time together. We're always presented with interesting questions, conundrums that people have, and or ponderings. They're thinking about following God and thinking about those kind of things, and so there's no shortage of mysteries as it pertains to Christianity. The broader scope of walking this Christian life out. And so that's what we do on these Thursdays, is try and respond to queries that you guys have had over the years, or have posted on the show. So today's topic, and we'll dive right in. Today's topic is essentially, do the Desert Fathers and Mothers say anything about inner healing? And so, the broader conversation about inner healing in that regard. And because juxtaposing the early church practice and to today, because we've got wildly different cultures, right?
Yeah, we have how many years? How many thousand years?
Well, it depends on where you start the timer at.
Just general. I know you're really bad at general history.
No, you got to do specifics. In terms of the Desert Fathers and Mothers,
I'm not even going to guess, because I know you'll be horrified at my ignorance.
Oh, I want you to guess.
4,000 years?
Early church?
No, the Desert Fathers.
That there were 4,000 years ago?
See? That's what I thought would happen.
Oh my goodness. We're going to stop the broadcast and we're going to resume after I can have
Let it be known that I failed history in high school. Just saying. I have always done poorly.
That the greatest Christmas gift my wife ever gave me was a set of history books.
To you, though. I didn't buy them for myself.
No. They were for me. Yeah, that's right. They were for me. Yeah.
Hey, Tash.
Yeah, great to see you, Tash. So anyway, the Desert Fathers started about 1,700 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So you're way off. Well, you realize 4,000 years ago was before Jesus, right?
No.
Can you please admit that you understand
I don't realize that, and I have no defense. I just
so there is no defense.
I accept that I'm wrong, and I thought I would be.
Okay, so
my point being, how they would have spoken about and viewed the heart and the makeup of a person, and what it, like the term inner healing is a very modern term.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we can't just say, did they talk about inner healing in Google, Desert Fathers inner healing? Well, we have to think conceptually.
Yes.
What is healing of the heart?
What's healing of the heart?
And did they speak to that?
Well, let's put it this way too, okay? It is a luxury of our modern time to be able to talk about emotional wholeness.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. Where, as opposed to 1,700 years ago, where threat of war, persecution, some form of violence, plague, this kind of stuff, sickness, was right around the corner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a luxury of our modern time is thinking about emotional wholeness, and that was not necessarily a luxury afforded to the early church.
Right.
So right off the bat, you have to talk about the not only just the difference in culture, but the difference in safety, life expectancy, and the different kind of pressures. Yeah, like the pressure to just survive there, where like nobody really thinks not broadly speaking as a culture. Obviously, certain predicaments, people have issues in that sense, but in terms of health and all that kind of stuff, right?
This is making me, in psychology,
Yeah.
we would exactly speak to, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs is what it is.
Oh,
so
sure.
it's a triangle,
Yeah,
right? And at the bottom, the idea being at the top of the triangle is self-actualization,
Yes.
emotional wholeness,
Yes.
oneness
I
with
remember
the
you
self.
talking about this.
The
Yeah.
bottom, and the idea is until you do each level, you can't progress to the next.
Right.
So the bottom one is survive. It's like food and water, or like
Right.
security. So like
Right.
shelter, food, water.
Right.
So unless you have those, you won't have the capacity to progress
Right.
to the next one. I can't remember. It's been a while, but they include things like community and belonging. I think that's the third tier.
Right.
So to what you're saying, if food and water and security, meaning physical security, are a constant unknown,
Sure.
you're not going to naturally progress to the next
Right. Yeah,
level
for
of
sure.
need.
Yeah. I you know, in a way, I can see the point in the
Yeah.
application, but
Well,
at
it's
the
a
same,
theory.
it's a theory. At the same time, I think that the biblical narrative reveals that the human heart longs
Yes.
for wholeness,
Yes.
right? That's our eventual destination.
God is bigger than the hierarchy of needs.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously.
And so survivability may be the hierarchy of needs, and you can't,
Yeah.
and it's difficult to progress, but the
Yeah.
desperate need of the human heart is not so much to survive. The desperate need is for
Mhm.
justification and wholeness.
Yeah.
I think Scripture characterizes that in 1 Corinthians 13 as being fully known,
Mhm.
right? So everything is on the table about who I am, therefore I'm justified,
Yeah.
right? And everything is seen and known, therefore
Mhm.
I'm emotionally whole, as opposed to disintegrated and fractured because I'm unaware.
Yeah. Suffice
Right.
to say, the challenges that they had are different than the challenges we
Yeah,
have
for sure.
in our cultures and in our eras.
Yeah, so that's the first thing you have to say when you're investigating what did not just the Desert Fathers but the early church fathers, what did they say in regards to inner healing, and did they say anything in regards to inner healing? And because you're not going to find a plethora of written works on inner healing in the early church, right? Not like today. Like, the Christian inner healing section is practically as big as the secular self-help section, right?
Is a commodity.
Yeah, it is.
I say that as someone who works in inner healing.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure. We're totally bought in when it comes to the healing of the inners.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
In a certain sense, right? But not. Anyway, yeah. Like we're not criticizing the healing movement at all. We're involved in that. So great to see Kim and Annette on. Always fun to. I was just with Kim a few weeks ago. That was awesome hanging out with Kim and being in Calgary. So
yeah.
Kim sends you her love, by the way. So
yeah, she put hearts right there.
Yeah, well, I mean, she sent it physically when she said.
She only just told me.
She verbalized
right
it
now,
to
Kim,
me. Yeah.
So
yes, but I did tell you.
You might want to rebuke him for that later.
I did tell you, so I'm successful in that, right? So okay, so I'm just going to say this in regards to the whole conversation is this is really a topic in the transformation book as it regards to inner healing, or the life of becoming more like Christ. And you'll find a lot of references to church history, how church history approached transformation in that regard, right? Quotes and stuff like that. So the just snapshot, yeah, Kim, I'm sorry, okay. I conveyed it. So the transformation book is full of quotes and all that to characterize what church history has said about this, right? So in regards to a short form conversation, there's one quote that I think is really helpful, and it's in the one of the devotionals that I wrote on Abba Pullman, which is Pullman was a desert father in the 4th century, and his name means shepherd. He was known as a very pastoral figure, and what's emphasized is his care and concern over the individual need, the individual, the state of the individual's heart, right? Pullman, like I said, very influential figure. Actually, when it comes to the body of literature that is the collection of sayings from the Desert Fathers, Pullman's sayings they constitute most of the narrative, like the largest bulk of the narrative. So Pullman, probably 25% of the sayings are attributed to Pullman.
Right.
And interesting historical fact, that could be because his name was Shepherd. And so they attributed shepherd-like sayings to Pullman.
Oh, so
there's some debate as to whether that's because he was
did
kind
he
of
write them all?
Did he write them all? He was definitely
or do they
a figure.
sound like things he would have written?
Exactly. Yeah, he was actually a figure, but was he kind of a category as well? Anyway, so he said this, and you can get these on the website too. Shameless promotion on the windministries.ca website. He said, "Not understanding what has happened prevents us from going on to something better," and that is that's a pretty clear indication of a theology of inner healing.
Yeah.
A theology, at least, of reconciling past experiences with our present life in order to move into what God has for us, right?
That, like, in our modern terms, you would say you need self-awareness. You need to take personal ownership.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for, if you look at the brain and you take the kind of typical idea of the left brain holding our logic and our ability to do things, to function, and our right brain holding more of our emotional sides and being connected to those different areas of the brain. There is research that would strongly suggest that the right brain, so our emotions, have trouble going where our left brain doesn't understand.
Right.
So it doesn't mean we need to understand every level of every single thing.
Sure.
You don't need to know the minutia, but to have an idea of perhaps what motivated you to act that way or make that decision or respond that way.
Right.
Understanding where you've contributed or where other people have contributed, having some ownership and understanding of that allows your right brain and your emotions and your pain to come over there and kind of reconcile those two things. And inner healing, of course, would then bring the Lord into the center of that.
Yeah, it's a human principle.
Right.
That what Pullman says is a human principle.
Yeah.
And
we clearly are. In Proverbs too, it says we're made to seek to understand mystery.
Right. And Proverbs 25 too.
Yeah, and our world is clear evidence of that.
Yeah.
The level of, like, the pinnacle that we put education.
Right.
Education's like a pinnacle of success in our world.
Yeah.
What's education?
Right.
Good education is seeking to understand a mystery.
Yeah.
To explore something or expand on an idea.
Right.
And in inner healing, we do the same thing. We want to know why.
Right. The mystery of the heart.
The mystery of the heart.
Yeah.
Why did that happen? Why did that person act that way? Why did they respond that way?
Right.
Why are they still held back by this thing that happened 30 years ago? Right? What is that? How is it that something that happened in childhood is still affecting us today? What's the connection? That's what those of us in inner healing want to understand and we want to understand so that we can guide that person to a place of freedom today.
Sure.
And what we do understand is that we need we need Jesus.
Yes.
We know enough to know we can't do it, and we know enough to know you can't do it.
Right.
Without the Lord, without that supernatural element.
Right.
That only he brings.
Yeah.
But he is gracious enough and desires for us to be involved in that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. In regards to actually, I want to show something. There's a book over on that desk right there. It's the green cover. No, not that one. Is there another? No, the big one. The big one.
Oh, here?
Yeah, that one there. Yeah. There's a like today, inner healing would be characterized by you scheduling a session with someone, sitting down with them for a few hours and walking through particular pain parts in their life. Yeah. Maybe painful memories, painful moments. And there's all kinds of things to say in regards to that. Like, the typical practice, in thinking of the early days of the present inner healing movement, right? Mm-hmm. The early practice was bringing up a memory, picturing where Jesus was in the memory, finding the perspective of Jesus and what he thought about that memory, right? And that could be really helpful, and that was helpful for some, but not everybody's memory works in a straight line. Memory doesn't work in a straight line.
Notoriously unrieliable.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is okay. I mean, but it's well documented. You can read. There's thousands of studies on memory to show that how we remember events of the past is probably at least like inaccurate to a degree.
Yeah.
Probably a high degree.
Yeah.
The further back you go, the less accurate the memory. That
memory tends to bleed into each other. So you remember memories become monolithic moments.
Well, your brain can't handle fragments.
Like, here's an example of what we're trying to say. Yes. I think is if you think about a particular park that you went to when you were young.
Yeah.
You don't so much remember key moments in that park as all the moments in that park.
Right.
Right. So my memory of the park is not based on a linear narrative. My memory is based on the idea of it and all the things that happened in it. So when I remember the park, I don't remember it as the sequence of events.
Right.
I remember things that happen, and then the park becomes an idea that I have about my past. Right.
And I just want to clarify what I mean when I say memories are inaccurate. They are.
Yeah.
Like science shows us that without a doubt. That said, though, it doesn't discount the emotion and the pain or happiness, like whatever we hold in that memory, that's still real.
Right.
So let's just make sure we know it's not like, oh, you're wrong, just ignore it.
Right.
No. If there's pain there, if there's wounds there, those are real.
Right.
And those are valid. So I just want to put that out there.
And
there's also more than one type of memory.
Yeah.
There's auditory memory, there's the physical memory, emotional memories.
Yeah.
And like logical, like brain memories, like visual memories. So we're not just dealing with one type of memory. I
could like it's going back to the park one.
I feel like we're really off topic.
Well, we're on topic. We're talking about
we've gone way down this rabbit trail.
If the numbers of people go down to 0, then we'll know we've lost everybody's interest. But I do think this is an important part to talk about, right? Is the way memory, in a brief sense, the way memory works. I could have picture my time in a park that I used to go up to that was next to a lake. My parents used to take us to, and I could picture. I remember a bridge that we used to play under, and I could picture myself playing there, and where was Jesus there? I could see him appreciating me and the playfulness, and then walk down to the beach where we fed geese and think about you would hate the geese because you'd never liked geese, but I liked feeding them.
Geese are horrible and
not very Canadian of you.
That's why I have the right to despise the geese. I was chased by a goose and attacked by them multiple times.
So I can think about, I could in the same moment where I'm closing my eyes, picturing Jesus, seeing all these things. Where is he? His appreciation of my childlikeness, our dog going into the lake and swimming across the lake, and all these things. These are like years apart in terms of when they happened, right? But when I bring it all together and I see myself going through it, I don't make the distinction because I don't remember how the difference between them all. It's just a memory, right? It's just that area, and it's just a memory. And so when we have these painful moments that stand out, especially with someone that was abused, maybe serial abused, verbally abused, and you picture Jesus in that memory, you're remembering a monolithic memory.
Yeah.
And multiple moments that Jesus comes in. So there's the beauty of being able to heal the actual pain, because you can think of the memory in terms of the broader scope of it.
Yeah.
But there's also the issue of memories non-reliability. And so anyway, so that's why I like, in terms of the inner healing stuff that we're involved with, it's not so focused on picture this memory.
You don't have to have a memory.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't ever start by saying, think of a memory.
Yeah.
It's not part of but it could happen. It's just an option.
Yeah, it is an option.
It's optional.
It is, yeah.
For sure.
I'm just saying that because that's where a lot of people would characterize inner healing as picturing a memory, inviting Jesus, and finding healing. That's kind of the general or vague way that people think about it, because of how it began in the 90s, or in the 1900s. I mean, when it began in the 1900s. And so that's not quite what we mean when we say that. And you'll never find that kind of practice in the Desert Fathers or in the early church fathers. Picture a memory, go back into the memory, ask Jesus to come into the memory. It's just not a thing that happens there.
Right.
I've never once seen that happen.
But what they offer are things that absolutely lead you towards a point of healing.
Oh, repentance, forgiveness,
right?
Serving within community and loving one another, and thinking of the best in the other person as opposed to judging the other person for their failures. And
that well, let's hear. So Sandy, love how you're connecting psych and theology. I mean, that's what I aim to do.
Right.
Literally. That's my passion.
Yeah.
I have to really work to understand and appreciate theology, to be honest.
Right.
Which you're not supposed to say if you're in ministry, but doesn't matter to me. It's really hard for me to understand theology, though. I have to work really hard at it. It doesn't come, I don't understand all the fancy words, what they mean. I find it really hard to keep that in my mind.
Right.
When I did my degree in psychology, it was like I finally found a language I was made to understand.
Right. Yeah,
that's true. It's so easy. But doing that, I really learned the limitations as well, and why we need the Lord and we need theology.
Right. One of the things you'll find is, like, for instance, in terms of the Desert Fathers, the Desert Fathers are, the movement is known as people going into the desert and spending time in solitude, right? However, what they noticed about that is that people that were already wounded, that were full of pain, that were full of anger, if they went and spent time by themselves, those problems usually got worse.
Oh, interesting.
Those problems didn't get better.
Right.
So they would say, and the first people that went into the desert, Anthony the Great, Macarius the Great, these guys, it wasn't until you get to around the time of John Cassian, at the end of the 4th century, where you've got codified practices that say the only people that should be going deep into the desert to spend time by themselves for years should be those advanced in maturity. Right. Those people that are just joining the communities, that are seeking to live a life of silence and solitude, should spend a significant amount of time in their community, loving one another, because the life of the community helps to tame the edge of it is a piece of healing. Exactly.
This is I've been learning a certain modality.
Heart sync ministries.
I've been spending time in training since 2018.
Yeah.
So I've done hundreds of hours at this point. And it's created by a man called Father Andrew Miller. What's interesting about him is he's an Anglican priest. And he's also a registered therapist. He has a master's in marriage and family therapy. But he's also Anglican. And so his theology is different than mine.
Right.
The way that he views scripture and applies it is different than me. And it has been amazing to expand what I thought and how I realized I had some rigid ideas, especially around the idea of repentance and forgiveness and stuff, of how it had to look to be real.
Right.
And then listening to him, he doesn't apply these things the same way that I do at all, especially in inner healing. And so it's been fantastic because it's completely shifted how I think and understand those concepts to work.
Right.
And what I understand now is that although Desert Fathers and Mothers maybe didn't say inner healing and maybe emotional healing, it wasn't maybe the priority because they had all these way more pressing matters.
Right.
But encouraging people to serve and live in community is absolutely necessary to your healing.
Yeah.
And so maybe it wasn't the goal, but they were absolutely creating a path from which it would happen naturally.
Right.
So we would
That's
say,
true. Yes.
Like living in community creates belonging, like trust and acceptance, being seen, doing that for others, which in turn expands your capacity.
Yeah.
Capacity would be defined as the ability to maintain meaningful connection with Jesus when pain is happening. So it's like
which was their
it's like an X
practice.
And a Y axis. And so the idea would be that if you have a high capacity, so you're at a 9, you can go up to a 9-level pain, right, on the graph before your capacity is reached, and you lose some of that meaningful connection.
Right.
If you have a capacity of 1, it only takes a level 1 pain to break
Right.
that meaningful connection. That's the basic understanding of capacity. And one
Right.
of the main ways you would build that is through the spiritual practices, connecting with Jesus, but then also with meaningful community.
Right.
Because it builds trust.
Yeah.
Right? It builds understanding. It allows you to serve.
Right.
Which, interestingly, they would say now we have data that shows servitude helps release symptoms of depression and anxiety. And I think it's because it makes you think outside of yourself.
Right.
So they were doing all these things
that's
that
a
now
very good way of
we
putting
have
that.
the science that kind of backs it up.
Yeah.
But they were following the Lord,
Right.
who was, of course, going to be leading them
Yeah.
into ways that do that. The only difference is that we now have, and it's great. We have Google Scholar, or if you're in university,
Right.
you have
Right.
your whole access to the
Yeah.
library, and you can go and you can find all the journals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They created an environment where that fostered healing of the heart.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have, I can't find specific practices that were like, now we're going to sit down and heal your heart.
Right.
Right. But you can find lots of stuff like understanding, Pullman saying, not understanding what has happened to you.
Right.
Will hinder your ability to move forward.
Completely built into understanding healing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so they'd have, right within their practices, they would have, I'm now going to sit down with an elder, divulge some of the things I've been struggling with, and have the advice. The advice the elder was going to give is less, let me help you connect with Jesus, and more, try these practices because this is going to help you. Like one guy in particular, Theopemptus, is struggling with temptation, right? He's having a hard time to divulging it. He's keeping a secret.
Right.
So one of the elders by revelation knows that he's struggling with this and asks him about it, and sits down with him, has, a time of tea with him or something, right? Where he's affectionate over him. So now we've got to set the stage for trust and capacity building.
Yeah.
So then he asks him, and Theopemptus says, no, I'm not struggling at all. And the elder says, oh, well, I'm really struggling. Right. So now he makes a connection of acceptance where Theopemptus can begin to open up.
Right.
Oh, okay. Now I feel seen and heard. Right. So Theopemptus opens up and says, actually, I have been struggling. And so the elder, Macarius, gives him some advice and says, what is your spiritual routine like? He asks him, right? And he says, well, this is what I do. He says, well, adjust it this way, and I'll be praying for you. So now he's got a fatherly figure,
right,
who's offering forgiveness, right? Not shaming him for what he's done, and giving him some wisdom and insight. And so Theopemptus walks away from that stronger than ever,
right,
and adjusts his spiritual routine and knows that Macarius is going to be praying for him. So there's not so much well, this is what you do to heal someone, but you can see the environment being created right within that story. And Theopemptus, shortly down the road, is known as one of the greater, quote unquote, strugglers, right? Which is what the term that they used to define themselves. So you definitely have the practice built into the system, right? So this is the book I had Erin grab. I've been going through this, Mental Disorders and Spiritual Healing, from Teachings from the Early Christian East. It's going through a lot of the teachings of the early church fathers, especially the Desert Fathers, and talking about what kind of mental health problems did people experience, and were there things that were just physical? Were there things of spiritual origin? Were there things of historical? The person's personal history, and how did they define those things, and then how did they assign, or how did they practice healing? And a lot of the way they practiced healing was through the acceptance of a community. Like one of them, where it talks about people that are struggling with mental health, is rather than ostracizing them, which is what a lot of people in the church do, is there a specific intent to bring them in and care for them, right? And they would look at it as, I'm suffering, this person who has mental health, who may be insanity to a certain degree, obviously that is a broad spectrum in terms of what the word insanity means, but fits of rage and things like that would happen, is the monastic community bringing them in would look at the life of kind of bearing with that person's rage as bearing one another's burdens. And so in one sense, their problems are helping us draw closer to Jesus,
Right.
because we are like Jesus. The blows that were inflicted upon him and he still loved, we're doing the same thing, right? But then through the course of doing that, that person themselves was healed, right? Were healed. So there's a very much codified practices within the community to say, let's help people that are struggling with mental health, right? Different language they're going to use,
sure,
but absolutely, but the application is less, here's a prayerful practice, and more, here's a way we're going to structure things for you so it happens, right?
Yeah. A practical outworking.
Yeah, a practical outworking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you've like, one of the things going through the inner healing stuff, we've talked about this, and you've talked about this, is just like, okay, you want healing. Well, I need you involved with a life group, right? Or something like that, right? A Bible study where you're with people and sharing and divulging and being prayed for. That's a significant part of the process.
The healing doesn't only happen in a session.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. I saw a therapist talk about this online, and they were like, therapy is great. Obviously they're going, I'm a therapist, I think therapy is great. And they're going, but you have to understand the real change takes place outside the office.
Yeah.
Because this is outside the office is when you are implementing all the things we talk about inside the office.
Yeah.
And inner healing is similar in that, I will say, in a session, we absolutely we see things delivered.
Right.
And we see healing happen, but it's outside. I mean, a session's only an hour or two.
Right.
It's outside the session that you walk that out.
Right.
And that you have your community and need your community to be helping you maintain that freedom.
Right.
Right. It's not. So sometimes I have found there's a unhealthy dependence on prayer and healing in the church.
Yeah.
Where you're going every Sunday, you're going up for prayer and you're going, why isn't it working? But in reality, you're clinging to that 15-minute window more than is good for you.
Right. Sure.
Right. Because the person praying for you can't like walk out your healing for you.
Right.
They can pray with you and they can agree with you and speak into your life and petition the Lord.
Yeah.
But they can't live your life.
Right. Yeah.
And so we've got to make those distinctions clear as well.
Absolutely. So obviously there's way more we could talk about in regards to the topic. We are planning in July to have a Healing the Wounded Heart online seminar.
That's right.
So, that more information will be coming out about that. That is coming up. Now, just before, because we're going to bring this to a close, I'm going to put a link up here for people that are interested, because we do have a seminar coming up that is in part revolving around this concept, and that's our Dark Nights of Spiritual Struggle webinar. And well, that sounds super heavy. It is one of those things about here's a link right there, about bringing awareness and understanding to the seasons of life and what's happened to you, because that is a significant part of healing.
Natasha, text me.
Yeah, I'll just talk once a minute. Yeah, that's right. And so we have an upcoming webinar, Dark Nights of Spiritual Struggle, happening June 20th to the 23rd. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And we'll be going through and talking about specific seasons where we're groping for God and can't find him. Yeah. And those seasons often God uses to heal our hearts and to deal with deep insecurities and deep need within us. And there is an application towards the current conversation. But so if you're at all interested in what we've been talking about, check out that webinar. The link is there. It'll be a live webinar. There'll be other people there, and opportunities for prayer and that kind of stuff. So the one thing I want to say, I was just that little part of what is God speaking anything, because we like to incorporate prophecy in most of what we do, is I just saw a picture for Sandy, who I'm assuming is still on because she's been watching the whole time, Sandy Thomas. I saw a picture of the Father giving you it was like you had a golden scepter is the picture that I saw. And I felt like the Lord was showing me that he is redeeming the use of authority in your life. And he's purifying it and redeeming it, the way that you operate in authority, in leadership, and in the position that you have. That God is redeeming that in your life. And that redemptive process has been ongoing for a couple of years, but it's especially sped up in the last few months. That redeeming and that refining of it's like some of the ways that authority was exercised in your life or in your early 20s was not so much damaging, but just unhelpful. And the Father's redeeming how that's happened, how you've seen that, how it's been practiced in your life, how it's been exercised in your life. He's redeeming it and purifying it, and he's setting you up. It's like there's a niche he's putting you in where this is going to be super helpful for you to be able to do the thing you're called to. But it's really it's like great authority in a small sphere, because that great authority is going to accomplish much in the sphere he's given you. So Sandy would just bless you. And I hope that makes sense. You have anything to add?
I don't think so. That was good.
Okay. And hopefully Sandy's still on and heard all that. Let's see. Was just a topic for future? Oh yeah. And then Zachary, was it just making disciples before? You're just giving me a word, so thank you. Yeah, Sandy. I'll put that on the list of questions for sure. So we will not be live next week because we will be on planes. We're going to Dallas. Erin and I and our youngest son Cassian will be in Dallas for a gathering with streams, different teachers and such, and meeting with other people and that, and and connecting with my dad.
That's
been
great.
A long time, right?
Yeah.
So we won't be live next week, but we will be live after that. Yeah. So blessings, everybody. Thanks for jumping on.
You.
Always a great time spending time with you guys, and we just bless you to engage the life with the Father and the life of the Father, that you'd hear from him, receive from him, and that every moment of your life would be a moment of falling deeply and madly in love with the passionate pursuer of your heart. That is Jesus. Yeah. Amen. So amen. So we bless you guys, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.